and welcome to Connected. I'm Divya Gopalan. The musical Don't Cry Dancing Girls is attempting to cross oceans and cultures, taking the production's very Taiwanese elements from its home here to an off-Broadway audience in New York City. Here's a taste. Now, part of what you saw was the three sisters hoping to get their inheritance by performing funeral rites for their uncle. It will be an experiment in how audiences who may not be familiar with Taiwanese traditions and culture will receive the show performed in Taiwanese and Mandarin with English subtitles. We will be hearing from the cast and crew, but before that, we grabbed a few members of the audience after they watched one of the final performances in Taiwan before the production took flight. And we asked them what resonated with them and their thoughts on the show's off-Broadway ambitions.
应该算第7还是8，
我看过蛮多次的，
已经算是忠实观众。
其实我来之前我都不知道这个故事在讲什么，那今天看了之后就是很感动，因为他讲了很多我们台湾的一个传统的一个文化跟习俗，然后中间又有穿插了很多就是家庭的一个大家要怎么样的表达自己的爱，这是我觉得是很多我们台湾成长的孩子们不知道如何对自己的家人表达爱。
他们姐弟还有家庭之间的那些亲情互动，虽然这就很台湾人的文化，就是嘴巴上都不说爱，可是虽然用字可能都没有爱，可能还有那种骂人的感觉，但是其实都在表达爱，对，所以我蛮喜欢那个部分。
就是有一种像艺术治疗的感觉，就是每个人其实都受过伤，不一定是像可能剧中这样，就是经过生离死别，他其实人生中会遇到一些受伤的地方，或是跟自己没办法和解的地方。那看这出其实就是我觉得最大的帮助就是有一种陪伴自己走过那些的感觉，然后就是就算遇到不同的事情，你可能在剧里面可以找到面对自己人生困难的方式。
美国的观众应该会觉得这是一个文化冲击，因为相对于比较外放的情感而言，华人的不管是爱或者是亲情，其实都是比较内敛的。那么就是我觉得可以带给他们，不管是视觉或者是感官，都是一个新的体验。
其实我一开始也蛮好奇，说如果这出戏要搬到百老汇，那原本的有一些经文啊、台语的部分要怎么搬过去？但我觉得其实这种东西是一种不需要语言，就是你就算不懂他的语言，你也有办法。
我觉得不会变的就是感情嘛，你的哭、你的笑、你的能感动大家的那个情绪是一样的。
The lead actress, Ching-Chia, plays one of the sisters you just saw there. Our reporter Izzy Wells caught up with her before rehearsal and asked what makes this role stand out in her 17-year career.
So you've been in the industry for about 17 years. What's different about this musical to others you've been in before?
这个角色其实他快要几乎是一个 solo。
我们还要赶高铁啊！阮先来到，大家较早休困哦。嘿，给你送去一刀一地好。
很接近独角戏了，然后他需要承担的分量都比以前遇到的角色都还要多，而且他的这个人的一生在舞台上被讲述得非常的仔细。这是一个我们比较难在音乐剧里面看到一个这么大的分量的接近独角戏的角色。
Now, there's a lot of Taiwanese in this production, I've heard, and I've read that before you didn't really speak that much Taiwanese, so you really had to memorize your Taiwanese lines. Was this a big challenge for you when preparing for the role?
非常的困难，因为一开始我们家里不是讲台语的人，然后所以这些台词对我来说有点像第二个语言，但是因为平常从小到大你还是会看电视，你偶尔还是会接触到台语，然后我还为了台语这件事情我有去上台语课，然后我还记得第1年的读剧，我在台上念台词，然后我念到之后我的台词一直讲不好，我直接在台上即兴说哦，我到底在说什么？对，所以但是学台语对我而言有点像是学音乐的旋律，很像 melody， 所以比方说你假爸呗，我就只要记我就记它的音高，对，所以这是我慢慢克服台语的过程。
Yeah, I did take some Taiwanese classes before, and it's too tough. I can't.
很难，对不对？
So you're about to perform this musical in New York.
Yeah.
How does it feel to be making your Off Broadway debut?
So nervous. 一方面是我知道 Broadway， 我其实喜欢音乐剧的人都会把 Broadway 或者是 London 西区会作为一个指标性的地方，所以你从小时候就大量的看这些地方的影片，所以很像做梦一样，就是有一天你突然也要去到那个地方，然后在那里演出，有一点像是美梦成真，但是同时你又会觉得。你也会担心，就是不一样的文化能不能引起同样的共鸣，这是我会比较害怕的。
And that actually brings me on to my next question, is that there has been some changes made to the original performance to adapt it for the US. How challenging has that process been as an actor?
Yeah, 就是我们有为了这个在纽约的版本缩减了1个半小时以上，所以对我来说最大的挑战是，我们本来有很多时间可以慢慢累积情感，但是现在是浓缩，所以导演就跟我说了一些笔记，他说，你的这个角色的人物他没有那么多时间慢慢去累积，所以你一定要把角色的冲突做到更困难，更渴望。那这对我来说是新的挑战，因为这个戏剧的 flow 是不太一样的，对，所以我觉得这是我目前排练下来觉得最大的挑战。
And a good challenge in a way.
对。
So this musical touches on a lot of uniquely Taiwanese themes.
Yeah.
What do you hope the musical will allow you to share about Taiwan with the audience in the US?
这个戏最大的 topic 是在讲父女之间的感情，然后我觉得，亚洲文化的父女之间的情感，比方说我和我的父母的相处，就是比较是不会是把爱放在嘴边的，我们会常常做一些很贴心的举动，但是我们不一定会表达我们的爱意。然后我觉得这是一个亚洲亲子之间很特别的一个相处的方式，但是我相信父女之间的情感在任何一个文化底下都会产生共感的，这是一个我们想要传达爱的方式。然后第二个当然就是台湾的迁王文化，就是这一个仪式其实是非常的充满爱的，它的语言里面虽然是在送走亡者，但是其实它更多的爱是在关爱家属们，所以这个仪式的出发点是一个非常充满爱，然后浪漫的一个仪式。然后这两个事情是我们最想要透过这个故事分享给世界各地的不同的朋友。
Yeah, and I think it's super exciting that it's going to New York, and I'm sure people there will love it. Thank you.
Well, Ching-Chia isn't alone in hoping to share this story with the world. Ken Dingledine had the same vision. The award-winning Broadway producer was instrumental in making this happen. He told our reporter Brian Cragen why he felt this production deserved a chance on a Broadway stage.
Following your kind of entry into this production side, we're really curious, what is it that made you feel like this production was something that had to be taken to the US?
As a theater professional, you rely on your gut a lot, right? You rely on your instincts to send you in the right direction. And when I first got to know this piece, I realized that there was something really special and human about it. And that's the part that's really key, is storytelling, and specifically storytelling that's going to cross some cultural borders here, needs to be relatable at a human level. And the relationships that I was struck with in this show between fathers and daughters and siblings and big themes of life and death, those are, every culture deals with, every human wrestles with those and deals with those concepts. So that's the first thing that attracted me, as I was like, wow, this is talking about some really big concepts in actually a fun way, but a touching and entertaining way. And look, it's gotta have an entertainment value as well. That's what Broadway's known for. So I would say there was that. And then finally, the last piece was, you can't have a good musical without good music. And this has some really inventive and stirring music that I think is, when you set it against the context of this very traditional, sometimes traditional story, and this music that's really current, I think it really gets exciting.
I find that in the production, kind of the tone of the family relations are a little bit more Taiwanese, where maybe it's not quite as direct as we may be used to in the West. And then with these funeral rites, they're also a very uniquely Taiwanese type of a way of having a funeral. So my biggest question on that is, how do you think that the US audience is going to receive those more specific Taiwanese parts? And then why do you think that this production, with all of those very specifically Taiwanese parts, can cross over to Broadway?
Yeah, so we learn from culture. We learn from other cultures all the time, right? And I think that is something really important, especially with a concept like death, right? Like we're constantly learning how to deal with that, right, as humans. And so how other cultures deal with that is something that ultimately helps us, right, in our own journey. So I think there's the U.S. market and the U.S. audience is certainly a multicultural audience to begin with, right? And so there's a openness and a curiosity about other cultures. So that's one thing that we go from. I think the other aspect of it's kind of a mantra that I go by is this very distinctly local feeling, right, or storytelling, I should say, very distinctly local storytelling with a highly universal message. And if we can connect those dots between, because some of the greatest works in the world are very specific on a cultural occurrence or are very specific to a culture, but they again deal with those larger human themes. So if we can connect those dots between those two things, I think that's where the real magic, and frankly, that's where the audience will enjoy it the most.
So aside from those cultural differences, there's something that's also very unique about this piece, and that is that it's mostly in Mandarin and Taiwanese. So aside from being culturally different, it's also very linguistically different from what people maybe normally see in an off-Broadway performance. So I would like to know, how are you kind of handling this, and do you think that something that's so linguistically different to what we're used to seeing can make it there?
So right now, we're keeping it in Mandarin with some English subtitles, and we've added another character that's a narrator character that will speak in English as well to help. But again, this first audience, right, is really going to help us take the next step in evolving the piece, right? So this audience is going to be very people who might speak Chinese already, and there will be people who don't speak Chinese that are more in the theater community. And between the feedback we get from this phase, we'll then take our next step. which will include having a new writer come on board. There'll be a writer that will write in English. They will work with the existing creative team, and the result that we will get will be a new version of this show in English. And that's very exciting, but it's also very difficult. This is where the real work happens.
Definitely, and to that, has this kind of thing ever been done before? These kind of
Wow, it's there have been some attempts, and there have been shows that have been written by Western writers or Broadway writers, but started in other territories, right? This happens a lot in Korea, actually. You might have people who write for Broadway often come to Korea and create a new musical and translate it back into Korean first, and then bring it over to Broadway. But I can't think of too many examples where the original team was local to that territory and that it found such success to begin with in that territory, and then we're bringing it to Broadway. I think this is a pretty unique situation.
The Ministry of Culture has been really supporting this endeavor. I'd like to know, why do you think that they're so eager to have a Taiwanese production on the streets of New York City?
Look, it's nothing, in my opinion, and I think it's might be theirs as well, is nothing helps to communicate a culture than its arts, right? And its entertainment. And so you really, even more than being able to read history or read, if you feel and experience a culture, I think that's oftentimes the biggest, strongest communicating tool. So there's a desire to communicate about Taiwan, right, to the world. And if you tell a Taiwanese story in a global language like musical theater, you're gonna affect and influence a lot of people. So that's where I think there's a lot of excitement and a lot of support, and we thank them very much for being a part of this journey with us.
So aside from excitement within the Taiwanese population and those who are extreme fans of the production here in Taiwan, have you heard any kind of feedback from maybe Taiwanese American community members?
That is, I'm glad you're bringing that up, because that's a very key market that we're actually doing this presentation for in New York as well. I depend on their feedback. I depend on their helping me resonate, helping me identify the resonant points with the show in Chinese, and then knowing what they know and experiencing what they experience in the Broadway market as well. So they're a very important connector tool.
And you kind of touched on this a little bit already, but what do you foresee as like the more long-term plan for Don't Cry Dancing Girls after these workshop readings?
Well, it's important to know that an average Broadway show takes about 7 to 9 years of development, right? So that's a long time, from inception to opening night. It's highly competitive, it's highly costly. So the next step after this reading and workshop would be we'll identify a new or a couple new team members to be a part of the creation of the show, and specifically the writing first. And then we'll go through a development phase and a workshop phase with actors in the Broadway community, and we'll then take in further feedback from that. And then when we're ready, we will have our first commercial production of this show. Most likely in the Broadway world, we won't open cold on Broadway. We'll make a relationship, or we'll open at a larger regional theater, maybe outside of Broadway. But all of this is to get the momentum going for the show, frankly, to raise the funds and investment for the show. And at each step, it kind of proves itself out, right? So that by the time you get to Broadway, with the big budgets that you will have there, you have more confidence and you're set up for success commercially as well.
What are the biggest differences between the U.S. theater industry and Taiwan's theater industry, from what you've seen in your time here?
Well, size is one thing. The U.S. market is bigger, and it's got a fairly robust touring market as well. Again, New York is the epicenter of Broadway or musicals. I would say the market in the U.S. is more mature in a way, right? We've been doing this longer, right? Finally, the educational the educational component of the arts and Broadway is really important. And so we have many colleges and universities across the U.S. that offer a musical theater program, right? So all of that is very important to the ecosystem that has now developed very much in the U.S. So look, there are good stories everywhere. There's good stories in Taiwan, there's good stories in the U.S., there are good stories all around the world. But the mechanisms to bring those stories out in a industry like Broadway take a lot of structure. And I think that's what we have maybe a few years head start in the U.S.
So when we spoke before, you also kind of mentioned the difference between how creators are supported in the two industries. Could you share a little about that?
So I would say there's a emphasis I've seen here in Taiwan on the actual creation of the work. It's almost like a creator economy here. And I think that going back in history, probably, it has a lot to do with the storytelling that has been very important in the Taiwan, culture. And so that I see a big respect, and also it's okay for your show to be small in the beginning. That's okay. Like to start small and to start trying to figure out the story with a small audience or even a small focus, and then allowing it to grow into that larger Broadway scale is okay. And I see that acceptance here and that understanding actually here in Taiwan as compared to other markets that go big first, right? And it's okay. Big growth can come, right? But get the story right. Get that right first, and then we've got something to grow.
So finally, I'd like to ask if you think that maybe Taiwan's theater market could possibly have the potential to become more of a big name along the lines of like Broadway or the West End.
I think there's a huge potential here in Taiwan, and mostly because of the professionals that you have here creating good work. There's a understanding of the Broadway art form here, which is very interesting. There's a understanding of storytelling, as we've talked about, but really there's it comes down to talent at the end of the day. And I have found such great talent, and it's been truly an honor to work with the talent at VM Theater Company, which is really the people who originated this. And from whether it be the writing or the directing or just the way to put together a show, I have seen that understanding of this form. And so that gives me a lot of hope and a lot of, I think there's a lot of excitement of where the Taiwan musical theater and theater community could go.
That was award-winning Broadway producer Ken Dingledine. Now we hear from creative director Tseng, who helped lead Don't Cry Dancing Girls to 2 sold-out tours in Taiwan since its debut in 2023. Brian asked him about the musical's cross-generational appeal.
This musical has actually received quite a lot of attention. I'd like to know, which generations are you seeing come out for it more here?
I think the younger ones, like between maybe, I don't know, 25 to like 40. I think this, and the interesting part is, most of the audience, the younger audience, after they see the show, they saw the show, they will try to bring their parents to come to see the show. So actually, in the second round of this, the second year of this run, of our show, and we start to see more and more older person, Yeah, I think the show actually delivered the message that, in the family, the value of, we're family. So pretty well, I think that's kind of the result of it, yeah.
And you said that those kind of family values and the family kind of dynamics between family members, those are kind of an international thing. But as far as like the Kambong ritual, all of these more maybe Taiwanese elements, they might be a little bit harder for an American audience to understand.
Yes.
So how exactly have you tried to make them a little bit more accessible for that audience on Broadway?
To be honest, for the audience here, actually this Kambong thing, it's really foreign for them.
Oh.
Yeah, because it's a vanishing, thing now in Taiwan because of the modern days. The pace for, do a funeral thing is so fast right now. Some of the audience, they saw the Kanbong ritual before, but they don't understand what they're saying. So this is the kind of the first time they see the subtitle and they're like, oh, so they finally understand what they're doing. For the American audience, maybe the actual Kanbong's, song and dance might be kind of like a chant. They don't understand, but I think they will understand it's kind of religious thing, in this ceremony. So I think if they can get that, it's enough for them. And I think it's going to be it's going to be a pretty cool thing for them to see. The music is foreign for them. The speaking, the sound is, and it's so foreign, and the dance, the movement, and the costume, and everything. I think there will be a quiet experience for them if they can see the actual show.
I'm also really interested in what it is that you view as kind of your hopes for the future for Taiwan's theater industry.
I think we should let our work, we can think more out of a box, because the market, sometimes we think about the market for theater, we're thinking about Taiwan, and it's a little island, and it's not, it's like the US or like Japan even, So, but I think we can think, broader than this. A good work, a good piece, can travel into a bigger market. So I think this is something I hope, maybe one day, this island can be a hub for a, creative thing, and maybe we can export this thing outside of this island.
Definitely, and hopefully Don't Cry Dancing Girls can be part of, the first step in that exporting of Taiwanese IP to other countries. At least that's what I'm hoping after seeing it. Finally, I'd just like to know, what impression do you hope that the audience in the US takes home with them after watching your performance?
I think it's all about, the parent and the kids, their relationship. Sometimes we grow up, misunderstand something, okay? And so maybe by seeing the show, they can, kind of share in the idea of the story and maybe think about ourselves and see, maybe there's something that we can learn from our own growing up with our the relationship with our parents, and maybe call your dad, call your mom, or just to say something. I don't know. I think that's the most important message we're trying to send out. It's the sometimes the appearances of something, maybe it's not what you see, maybe there's something beneath that maybe only your heart can know. So maybe that's the thing I think it's really important for everyone who see the show.
That brings us to our curtain call for this episode. We hope you've enjoyed hearing about Don't Cry Dancing Girls and the people who made its Broadway debut possible, both on and off stage. And for our viewers everywhere, it has been good to have your company. If you've enjoyed today's episode or have anything you'd like to add to the dialogue, join the conversation on our social media. And remember, stay informed, stay engaged, and stay connected.